Tonight on the All Kinds of Weather forecast, we get into fall camp. It's finally here. All the early stories coming out of camp, the sights and sounds, and three things we're looking for on offense and defense. This is the All Kinds of Weather forecast. And welcome in to another episode of the In All Kinds Weather Forecast. I am your host, Chris Yanes, alongside my co-host, Neil Schulman. And we have finally got some stories coming out of Gainesville. We are 3 days into fall camp. The Gators are in action. They are gearing up for the 2024 season. But for all of you out there, you probably should be gearing up for your financial security in life. And that's where 401k generation comes in. The In All Kinds Weather Forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. They also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether that's saving for your child's college, investment advice, or even your retirement, 401k Generations team of advisors makes getting to know their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures, one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. Also, want to shout out our competition that's been going on for a couple of days here. As you can see, this lovely hat will be in the possession of one lucky fan 1 week from the Miami game between now at this time of this recording and August 24th. If you subscribe to the In All Kinds of Weather Forecast YouTube page, leave a like on this show and a comment down below. What are things you're looking for out of the Gators this fall camp? You will be entered into winning this hat. And if you go back to our previous show and do the same thing, that will count as another entry. So the more comments, likes you give, more entries you get. So make sure that you share the show with your friends. Make sure you're subscribed, like, and comment. And the University Traditions hat here will be in your possession for the Miami game right before we kick off the season. So wanted to give that out there. All right, Neil. Let's get into to training camp here. We're 3 days in. We've got some early stories of camp, and I think we'd be pretty remiss not to, at the top, address the elephant in the room, and that is the injury to Montrell Johnson Jr., the senior running back. A lot of fears started spreading. It seems like every year around this time we get some bad news. Last year, unfortunately, it was Justice Boone, and it was very bad news. Tore his ACL. He has already returned. He's already on the field, primed to make a run at the starting defensive end position. But Montrell Johnson, a lot of people feared a similar severe injury what had occurred to him. Reports on Twitter spread there's something with the knee. That's never good when you hear the knee. A lot of people go to the worst case scenario. But the news did come out that it is a minor knee injury. He did have it scoped. It is week to week. A lot of sources within the program are predicting him to miss the Miami game, likely then would sit out the Sanford game and return for the Texas A&M game. Now, of course, his rehab could progress farther along and he could be ready for the Miami game. We don't know. But Neil, thank goodness the Gators have done a fantastic job scouting and recruiting the running back position. They are able to absorb an injury like this, even with the departure of Trevor Etienne over to Georgia, because we've got Trayon Webb, who played in a handful of games last year, also scored touchdowns in a lot of those games. We also have a freshman running back that is getting a lot of praise, and that is Jaden Baugh, who was a breakout player in the spring, definitely showed that he could play maybe that RB2, RB3. I mean, I think he's going to push guys on this roster that are already here, given his size, his strength, but also his speed. I mean, this guy is a bowling ball, 6 foot, over 230 pounds. As I think I've mentioned before, it kind of reminds me of Maurice Clarett back in the day, that big size, that strength, that speed too. He's going to play now because of this injury if he's not ready to go in the first week of the season. So between him, Trayon Webb, and also let's not forget Jacoby Jackson, who transferred into the program. A lot of reports coming in out of fall camp are that he's pressing for playing time and reps as well. So, And then there's Camp Carroll. Rehab is coming along. We'll see if he's ready for the season. I know that was a pretty severe knee injury when it did happen. Another injury that fans were had some horror stories, some PTSD from, but we're hoping to see him be ready for camp or ready for the season rather out of fall camp. So that's the update on Montrell Johnson. It's week to week. We'll keep updating you here on the show and on our website as the news comes out. But I think crisis averted for the moment because a lot of people feared the worst when it did happen. Uh,
Certainly could have been a lot worse.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Certainly
I
could have been
mean,
a lot worse.
yeah. No,
I
I mean
mean,
it.
and it may still like he. I mean, we're hearing he should be back for Texas A&M, but I mean, I don't know. Setbacks in rehab happens all the time. So, I mean, maybe he's out until Georgia, but it's not an ACL. It's not a season-ending injury.
Right.
Price is averted in that sense for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a situation where, if you I think the biggest thing that he brings to the table and a loss that Florida is going to have to overcome is his pass blocking. Because everybody knows Trevor Etienne was not a pass blocker. The guy gave up a sack in the Charlotte game. He gave up sacks against teams that had much more inferior talent. And that's going to be a weakness of his at the next level. But Montrell Johnson, that's where he excelled. He was a great pass blocker. He is he can hit the hole and get downfield very quickly. Certainly not the most explosive runner between the two or some of the other guys maybe in our program, but he does all the right things. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. He's going to wear the number one jersey. He earned that right this offseason. And definitely need to get him back sooner rather than later. So if it's the A&M game, I think we can certainly beat Miami without him. Definitely should be able to beat Samford. Hopefully, don't need to score 70 points this time when we play them. But, I think that is an injury we're able to absorb. Of course, we're 3 days in fall camp. A lot can happen between now and the end of August. So let's
We're four
pray
days in the
for
fall camp now. We
four
guys,
days. Okay, four
yeah.
days. I knew it was 3 or 4. I couldn't quite remember, but let's pray for health. And if injuries are going to happen in the game of football, they're unavoidable. Bad injuries too. Like you're playing a contact sport where guys are shifting also and they have non-contact injuries, and that's where those ACLs comes in. But let's put a lot of faith in the work that Tyler Miles has done this offseason by getting these guys in better shape, making them stronger, working on their mobility where you can avoid some of these injuries in some cases, not always all, but some. And let's hope that that translates to a mostly healthy team going into the season when we kick off against Miami, because we are going to need our A squad against those guys in order to beat them even in the swamp. So I think that's really the biggest story thus far going into camp. I mean, outside of that, I mean, you've got a lot of highlights coming out of the social media accounts. I mean, there was the ball that Eugene Wilson mossed in practice. DJ Lagway has certainly showed off his arm and ability. We all know what he's going to be. It's going to be very difficult to keep him off the field in some situations. I would imagine the staff is going to have some install and packages for him to get him on the field. He's a guy you really just can't keep off, and you want him prepared to take the reins after Graham Mertz leaves the program and this season. So he's going to get some looks there too. And then there's been a lot of different shifting around of the offensive line. One of the guys that nobody really talked about this offseason, but is starting to make a push at one of the tackle positions, that's redshirt freshman Caden Jones. You'll remember he was a 4-star ad late in the cycle back in 2023. And, it was us in Texas A&M. He's a Texas kid. Florida was able to win out in that situation. Shout out guys like Joe Hamilton, who just recently rejoined the program. Forgot we really haven't even covered that. I know you covered that, Neil, on a previous show, but that was one of the big offseason stories we didn't mention on our last show. Caden Jones is pushing for playing time at the tackle position. So that is huge if we're able to get him there. We brought in a transfer in Brandon Crenshaw Dixon. And then, of course, we still have other guys playing at that tackle spot who have experience. But that is a guy that if you could get one of these freshmen, because ultimately we've recruited a lot of guys into the program to play at offensive line. You're hoping that eventually these guys are developed and can actually start along. They're going to have to. Otherwise, you're going to have to continuously hit the portal over and over and over again. That's something you do not want to do. But that's a guy that if he is ready to play, now you could absorb injuries like we talked about at the top of the show, and you have depth. we really need to be 8, 9, 10 solid deep guys. We have 16 scholarship offensive linemen on the roster, and then 17 if you include a guy like Zandamela, who I don't necessarily expect to be ready this season, but hopefully in the future, that's a guy you're developing maybe into that center spot whenever Jake Slaughter, who has 2 years of eligibility, is exhausted that, and then he moves on, and a guy like Xanamella can come in, but he's going to get that runway to get there, of course. You know, Austin Barber. This is kind of a prove it year for him. He's shown a lot of flashes that he can be the guy and play against the best in the SEC, but he certainly gave up his fair share of sacks in the past couple of years. In big games, in big moments, we need him to step up this season. That 5 = 1 hat that he likes to wear. That's the kind of he's that leader on the offensive line, but we need him to be that leader on the field and making those big plays and protecting Graham Mertz's blind side. But if you have a guy like Austin Barber, you have a guy like another transfer in Devon Manuel who's played at Arkansas, another SEC player, Brandon Crenshaw Dixon, Caden Jones. You're starting to build that depth there at the tackle position. And then that's where the interior line comes in, as other people have talked about. You're starting to see guys like Roderick Kearney, who was projected to potentially be a center, is already now playing more guard. So if he's able to play guard, that gives you more depth, along with guys like Damian George, who shifted over there, Cam Waits, who also has played tackle and guard, kind of a Swiss Army knife of sorts there, and Najee Harris, another guy who is starting to earn some reps at there. So Florida's building depth along the offensive line. That's another story that seems to be coming out from the offseason here, and we're hoping to see more guys step up as the time goes on. Of course, I think outside of that, we'll go bring in the running back position. How does that split work out? Receiver position, what does that look like? We've said that we don't think Elijah Badger may quite start in that first game, but what does it look like? You've got Khalil Jackson, who made some amazing catches last season in big time moments, especially in that South Carolina game. You've got guys like Chim Dike, who came from Wisconsin, has a rapport in the past with Graham Mertz. Is he that receiver two behind Eugene Wilson, the third? And then other of those young guys like Aiden Mizell, Andy Jean, this is their year. Like this is the time that you want to see them start to step up and take on that role in the receiver room. And then if you can maybe get a guy like a Marcus Burke, who's been around for a long time, can he finally get there? Those are the stories we're looking at. And then a lot of people have talked about Jerry Hawkins and Tawaski Abrams. They fit in that mold of those guys that can run over 22 miles an hour. Do they maybe play special teams? Pump blocks, punt returns, kickoff returns. We're looking to see if Joe Houston can make a difference here, and already he's making a difference in Gainesville, as many may have already seen on social media. The it kind of reminded me of a game of Twister, Neil, but all white dots on the field. And if anybody hasn't seen it yet, go on Twitter. I'm sure you could probably find it if you just search it. But new special teams coach Joe Houston has created a mat with 11 white dots, and the guys are supposed to stand on it at all times if you are in the special teams unit. For that's punt, kickoff, field goal. Hopefully it works. We'll see. We'll see. I'm going to have to see this in practice before I can truly believe it. But, it's
You mean in the
evidence
game? You
in
mean
a
you
game.
want to see them practice it and then do it in the game? Because
Yeah.
we heard that Florida wasn't having any issues with the special teams in practice, and then we saw that that wasn't really the case in the games themselves. But
Yeah.
look, he's trying something. It's something.
Yeah. Listen, at least, I mean, look, we made a hire on special teams this offseason. And we've instituted this new thing to try to help us with making sure we have the right amount of men on the field. If it doesn't work, then you know what? Shame. It's like shame on me if I believe you one time.
Fool me
It's,
once, shame on me. You
yep.
could fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the kind of thing, we've got to see it now. Put it in practice, deliver in the game, and we'll see if it takes off. But I'm really excited to see, who fits in on special teams. Like I said, those guys with speed. Remember Urban Meyer was big on getting guys on the field in any way possible, and special teams was one of those avenues to do it. So I'm looking forward to seeing if those guys can make a difference there, if it works. So, all right, Neil, let's get into the three things we're looking for. So, Neil, can we've talked a lot about the stories and everything. What are three things you're looking for on offense this off or in the training camp? that you want to see before we kick off versus Miami?
Yeah, so I'd say number one, I want to see Arlis Boardingham take that next step at tight end. In 2023, he was more of that. Yeah, he's pretty good. Definitely did some nice things for us. Caliber of tight end. Can he take that next step to be a true difference maker, a true mismatch nightmare? Now, I'm hearing good things that he is getting even better as a route runner. I'd love to see that for myself on the field. But of course, that work starts here. And zooming out a little bit, I mean, you say that Elijah, and you're probably right, that Elijah Badger has some work to do in terms of catching up with the playbook, but he's dangerous. He is a problematic athlete. And at some point, it gets to be, well, you just can't not play him. It would be the same thing if, let's just say, Trey Wilson stepped on campus for the first time, never saw the playbook, never had any experience within the Florida offense. But then you watch the guy run routes, you watch him with the football in his hand, and you're like, all right, we got to do something with this guy. We can't just set him on the bench. So I think, I mean, obviously they're not exactly clones or different types of athletes, but in that same vein, I think that Badger is going to be too much of a problem for defenses to not give him an opportunity to do stuff. So that's number one. And also with boarding him, we know that Badger is dangerous. We know that Trey Wilson is dangerous. We saw it with Chimere Dike that he pulled in almost 700 yards worth of receptions from Graham Mertz in 2022 at Wisconsin. We know what they can all do. You get Boardingham to improve and break out and take that step from good to great and even elite, maybe that's your passing game. You've got it. If Boardingham takes that leap, you're golden as a passing offense. And really, at that point, all you need is just one more guy, be it an Aiden Mizell or an Andy Jean or a TJ Abrams, or even like a last dance breakout season guy like a Marcus Burke or a Khalil Jackson or someone, one more guy, any one of them to step up. And now you've got some depth. Not only do you have your starting lineup, but you've got real depth at that wide receiver room that you can, or in the pass catching room that you can really trust. So that's number one. Number two, similar theme here. What I just said for Boardingham, I want to see from Austin Barber. Again, he was fine. He was, I would say, a good offensive lineman at tackle. Didn't always do what he had to do though, and especially in pass pro. And I want to see him take that step from good to great, if not even to elite. And obviously, the offseason weight room gains that he's made are huge. I mean, they're huge for everybody, but I think for him in that position overall, the strength and conditioning work that's been done by Tyler Miles is more important there, probably than anywhere else, other than maybe defensive line. But on top of those gains, let's just see him play angry because he has at times, certainly, but not consistently. So let's see him show that anger, really deliver those painful punches off the line that just stymie the defender and neutralize him, if not even pancake him off the line. Let's see the pad level be good consistently, and then let's see him finish the block and not just punch the guy, but drive him into the ground like Michael Orr taking the guy all the way to the bus in the Blind Side movie, which is now a complete fraud. But anyway, we want to see Austin Barber do things more consistently for the Florida Gators. And honestly, I think if he has that breakthrough step forward year, he could be a first round draft pick. It's not unfathomable. He has to make improvements. Like I said, it's going to take him making a step forward, but he certainly could get himself into the first round. So I'd love to see that from him. Number three, this one I roll my eyes at because I know like we can't see this in camp. We can't possibly. We'll see it in some Twitter highlights, I guess, but that doesn't mean anything. But we will see the results of whether or not this happened in camp in the fall. Florida has a history of explosive offenses, and last year's offense was fine. It was good. I wouldn't say it was anywhere close to the Tebow spread years or the fun and gun levels of success, but okay, it did its job. I want to see a deep passing game established because really the one big complaint for Florida last year, other than the offensive line not being great, was the fact that Florida didn't really have that much of a deep threat. Occasionally, there'd be a deep ball to Pearsall here and there. Towards the end of the year, Trey Wilson was running some longer routes, but by and large, Florida did not have a downfield passing attack last season. And this year, Florida has the athletes to do it. Aiden Mizell, we've heard a lot about him this offseason. We've pegged him as an X factor of putting on that muscle mass, bulking up, and then being a part of the Gators offense in 2024 because we know he's got the speed. He hasn't lost that. He can easily take the top off the defense, use it, leverage that speed, throw a 9 route ball to him. Elijah Badger, as we said, can make some huge plays down the field. Let him do that. And hey, while I'm at it, while we're going to talk big plays, maybe let's use this time to figure out if the trick plays that we've spent designing in our bunkers all off season long actually work. Because if that trick play that we ran against FSU last year was actually tested out in a live scenario in practice where the offensive line just vacates the entire ground between the hash marks and invites the defense to just walk through the ground they've just vacated. And then the ball goes right back to the QB with 4 defenders bearing down in his face right through that area the offensive line just vacated. Napier probably realizes that that play belongs in the recycling bin and it never sees the light of day, which in turn gives Florida a chance to call something that does work and does produce for the Gators with a 12-0 lead against FSU. So hashing out things like that and really developing timing, developing rhythm, and at the end of the day, developing that downfield passing attack. Those are my 3 things.
I like that you talked about the explosive offense because that was one that I also kind of want to see as well. But I think the way you'll see that is with a stronger offensive line. So my key, or one of the things that I want to see coming out of fall camp, is an established offensive line that we can trust. I'm not so sure we really can say that in the last couple of years, dating really back to maybe 2018 was the last really good offensive line that we had at Florida. We were able to run the ball very effectively. That's why Dan Mullen was able to have a very successful first season. If Florida's able to protect Mertz, because obviously Mertz is not the most, I mean, he's shown times where he is mobile and, the play he got injured last year in the Missouri game showed that he can scramble and make a big play when he needs to. But that's not a guy like DJ Lagway, who we all know is going to be able to get past that first, second level of the defense and scramble and keep defenses on their toes. We have to protect him. And if we protect him, then we're going to give him more time to get that downfield passing game. We'll allow plays to open up and he'll be able to get to multiple reads in down the field. So I think for me, it's an offensive line that can go 10 guys deep and is a lot more reliable, doesn't give up as many sacks as it has the last couple of seasons. So, and if that's the case, then Florida's going to, by virtue, have a more explosive offense. So to me, offensive line is the big one right there. I think the second one for me is going to be how the running backs are split up. We all know once Montrell Johnson is fully healthy, he's RB1, but who's RB2 and RB3? We know Jaden Baugh has put on a show in the spring. He's continued to be one of the strongest guys on the team in the offseason workouts. He's already making waves in fall camp. It's going to be really hard to keep this guy off the field. And is he maybe RB2? I don't know. We have heard some things that Jacoby Jackson is off to a good start. He was the JUCO transfer that came in last year. Could he maybe be a guy that factors in that rotation? And then Trey Webb. Trey Webb, it's his second year in the program. This is the time to take that step forward and see what he can do. I want to, but I mean, I think the point I'm trying to make is if you got Montrell Johnson, Trey Webb, Jaden Baugh, Jacoby Jackson, you got 4 guys right there that you're rotating. So what does that rotation look like? And then does it lead to, if Montrell Johnson is the guy and he's getting the bulk of the carries, can he maybe try to get to 1,000 yards? Last year, he led the team with 817 yards to average over 5 yards a carry. He certainly has the ability to do it. I'm curious though how that rotation is going to break down. And then obviously to my first point, offensive line's got to do the job. Ultimately, they have to do the job. They have to hold up their end of the bargain if they're going to open up a downfield passing game and allow a running back like Johnson or somebody else to thrive in the running game and in that offense. And then I think the third thing for me is who from the outside of in the receiver room can take the pressure off of Eugene Wilson. Because last year, Ricky Pearsall was the guy. And then we all heard in fall camp, hey, there's this freshman who he wasn't even here in spring, but he's already pushing for playing time. And that was Eugene Wilson. And we figured out in the first week, this guy was special. He was doing reverses, able to switch the field. I mean, he had a fantastic freshman season. But now he's the guy, and everybody has got the film on him. Defenses are going to key in on him. Who can take the pressure off him? Is that Chimere Dike, Wisconsin transfer? Is that Aiden Mizell, a freshman, or Andy Jean, another redshirt freshman,
Sophomore.
rather?
So, yeah, yeah.
The redshirt freshman, sophomore, guys that did not play as much last year, are they able to step up? They were highly rated players coming out of high school. We need them to contribute in this offense, or is it Elijah Badger? Can he learn the playbook quickly in fall camp, get up to speed, and get on the field quickly to be that third receiver? I don't know. We'll see. And then I don't want to discount Khalil Jackson. I know you mentioned him. I mentioned him that he has in the past has made some very explosive plays, some amazing acrobatic catches. He's certainly still going to factor in this offense. He's a scholarship receiver athlete and earned that right through his play at the University of Florida. Obviously, I think what is he, quadruple legacy? Is he a third
Yeah,
generation or fourth generation?
there's that, and he is well Gator royalty in a way, in that his great grandfather
Right.
or his grandfather was the first black athlete on the University of Florida football team. So that's
Correct.
pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it is cool. And so, I mean, obviously, you would love to see, obviously, you root for a story like that and you want to see a guy contribute in a big way. So, I really love the receiver room even more so than last season. I mean, it's kind of hard, it's crazy to think that because Ricky Pearsall was such a dynamic player there. And, NFL teams thought so too. He went first round. But I actually like this room even better. So, I would think if I prioritize here, obviously offensive line to me is the key. If offensive line can improve to the point where they can protect Mertz, so open up the downfield pass game and see how that rotation then work for the receivers, and then it's also going to help with the run game. This offense, it could be better than last season in the first year when we had Anthony Richardson, who obviously was just a machine, a terminator amongst guys who unfortunately just did not have a great defense playing behind him, and at times special teams made some poor mistakes. I think he would have won a few more ball games as the starting quarterback, but
And he was raw because he didn't play the year before. That
you're
also.
right. Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, if Dan Mullen would have played him sooner, like we all were clamoring for, and could be having a different conversation about the legacy of Anthony Richardson at the University of Florida. But nonetheless, that's offense. Let's move to defense. Three keys, Neil. What are your three keys, things you want to see happen this training camp as we go into the season?
So number one, Joey Slackman. I love the dude. I've become friends with him off the field. My dad's a Penn alum, so that was a reason to root for him right there, even if he didn't go to Florida, because Pennsylvania Quaker football players who do big things are very, very few and far between. But anyway, I worked with Joey on a good feature story on an allkindsweather.com. Not to toot my own horn, but I do think that was one of the better pieces I've done. Definitely encourage y'all to go read that. It's called Hard Work Works Inside the Rise of Florida Defensive Lineman Joey Slackman. And I'm not going to give too much away about it. I do want to plug it and make y'all go read it. But very basically, he grew up in Comic New York watching the Tim Tebow teams from afar, never really thinking he was going to make it at Florida as a football player. But he wanted to play football. So he just decided, I'm going to start working. I'm going to start doing what I have to do to be good at football. That road included playing two additional sports in high school, being a three-sport athlete, both of which he says helped him become the defensive lineman he is right now. So it's time for him to finish that story. It's a really cool story, but he has to go write that next chapter now in the SEC. So Joey Slackman gets his chance on the SEC stage. Let's see him go to work and do what he's done the last couple of years at Penn, but this time in the SEC. Number two, and I say this with a heavy degree of caution, because the last thing, especially after the Montrell Johnson injury, the last thing I want to see is a fight where someone gets injured. But I do want to see some anger and some controlled violence from this defense. And again, I'll make it very clear that I want that violence to be enacted within the boundaries of the laws of the game. But this defense got humiliated last year. I mean, they were just flat out embarrassed time and again and again. The 702 yards to LSU, another 500 the next week to Missouri, and then capped off by the 4th and 17. You give up enough ground to Ray Davis to form a new country. And at the end of the day, you're sitting here at 5-7 when your offense is putting up 30, 35, 31, 32, 28 points a game. That shouldn't happen. This defense cost the team games, probably cost Florida 3 wins, if we're being honest. I mean, the offense lost the game against Utah, but the defense lost the game. Well, I mean, they're both bad against Kentucky, but the defense definitely lost the games against LSU and Missouri. And you could make an argument that even though Florida was completely outclassed by Georgia, it lost that game too. And then South Carolina, it tried its best to lose that one, giving up 37 points. So it's time to see some fire from this defense, which is going to be a combination of all the fundamental things, all the X's and O's, like attack the right hip, wrap up, time your jump right on these jump balls. Defensive linemen go after the QB with both hands up, play with your hands in the right pad level. But also on top of that, I want to see the returning players on this defense show that they remember last year and they are pissed about it. I want to see that showing up. Guys like Cam Jackson and TJ Searcy and Kelby Collins and Shamar James and Devin Moore practice with that edge and play like it. And it's going to rub off on the valued new pieces that we imported, like an LJ McCray and a Slackman and an Asa Turner and DJ Douglas, and so on and so forth. But I want to see that anger and that fire from the defense. And the last part, the last thing I'm looking for is Florida's defensive backs, particularly the sophomores, but the returning DBs, guys like Sharif Jensen and Jakeem Jackson in particular, take that next step because, like you said, they got beat up a bit as a freshman. They did some good things. I mean, Jakeem Jackson showed some promise in that Tennessee game, also got beat in that Tennessee game. So take the step forward from showing flashes, showing that you can do it, which, by the way, the Florida Gators would never have recruited you if they didn't think that you could do it. Just do that more consistently and show everybody that you can be that next level of defensive back. Do it in the summer because that's where it starts against your teammates. Because honestly, I feel really good about our defensive line right now. I feel great about our D line. All honesty, after what we saw last year, I couldn't possibly feel any better, right? With guys like Collins and Searcy and Jackson and Slackman, Caleb Banks, LJ McCray, Deontay Robinson. You got to feel good about that. Then you think about, okay, well, linebacker is going to include Shamar James. Oh yeah, we got that Pup Howard guy from South Carolina. Now I'm feeling really, and the two freshmen that we just got, Miles Graham and Aaron Childs. I'm feeling good there too. So now you think, okay, you shore up the secondary, and this defense has a chance to flip its results almost overnight. So this secondary, though, is going to be the key because I feel good about what we have in Devin Moore. I feel good about the transfers we got, like Asa Turner and Jaquaze Bridges and DJ Douglas. Get Denson and Jackson to step up, and suddenly, in the snap of a finger, I feel real good about this defense after not being able to be any more embarrassed by it than we all were last year.
I mean, I don't think I can say it any better. I definitely kind of is going to overlap with what I have to say, but I'll take a little bit of a different twist. I want to see how the freshmen play on this defense because I do think we're going to see freshmen that we're going to not be able to keep off the field. We've talked in previous shows about Aaron Childs, but I think you'd have to mention LJ McCray in that as well. I mean, this was a top 10 overall player in the country. Florida signed two five-star athletes. One of them was LJ McCray, and I think that
Top
he
five athlete in the country.
top five. All right, top five. So, I mean, elite player. I would think he's going to make a difference on this squad because if you look, I mean, obviously, I think TJ Searcy probably starts at edge, and then you've got to figure in maybe Tyreek Sapp plays that strong side defensive end, but LJ McCray could figure into that too. So I'm interested to see how he as a freshman plays, and then also Aaron Childs, Miles Graham. These guys, if they can make a difference and push for playing time, even if they don't start, it builds depth. And then that's going to help them in the years to come as we, continue on in this build with Billy Napier. So I'm really curious to see if they can step up. I've even heard some things. Josiah Davis, who's got an insane squat. There was that video that came out. That's a freshman right there. Greg Smith has apparently turned some heads early in fall camp as well. Not saying they're going to start, not saying or anything like that, but we're very confident in what we've brought in with Trequezy Bridges, DJ Douglas, Asa Turner, returning Bryce Thornton, Jordan Castell. But freshman, how much of a difference can they make? Maybe play on special teams, if anything. So I'm curious to see the freshman players on the defensive side of the ball, how they play in this second half. Neil, we have second thing, we've got to get to the quarterback. We were so bad at getting to the quarterback last year. That is why a lot of times our secondary did get burned. We broke contain. Now I think a certain individual is no longer on this team who could not keep contain. So we'll actually be facing him later in the season in the swamp.
Too
Think
bad
you
we're facing him in the swamp. I heard he was more comfortable in those little ass stadiums.
Yeah, definitely not a little last stadium in the swamp. Probably gonna be 90,000 plus for that one. So I like though the guys that we have on the roster. I think I'm confident that they can make a step up, but if the defense is going to take a step forward, they have to get to the quarterback. They have to get a lot of sacks. It's just not been a thing really since probably the 2019 season when we had Jonathan Grenard come over from Louisville. That Miami game, everybody remembers the legendary 10 sack performance from that defense in that game. It's pretty much why we won the game outside of some of those late offensive plays that we made. The 10 sacks in that game was huge. And in order for Florida to be successful in a very difficult schedule, if you're able to get to the quarterback, then that's going to start, that's going to keep teams away from thinking that they can take a deep shot and get hit those explosive plays. They're going to have to dink and dunk because they're not going to have as much time to get the ball out. So we've got to get pressure on the quarterback. And the third thing, tackling, 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 tackling. We've seen our new defensive backs coach Will Harris in practice actually demonstrating physically tackling and taking tackles from his fellow players. I want to see this secondary wrap up. No shoulder tackles, no banging a guy. Tackle them. Bring them to the ground. Do not let 2, 3 yard gainers become 10, 15, and pop them for longer, like maybe we saw in that Kentucky game. That's the one game that really sticks out in my mind. We cannot have that happen. We cannot have Ray Davis or running back like that run for 290 yards, whatever it was that day. We have to be able to wrap up, cannot have as many broken tackles against us. And if we do that, if we're able to get better at that, then I do think this team in the secondary especially will take a step forward because you won't have those explosive plays happen to us. And we're going to face some very difficult quarterbacks that are going to be able to stretch the field. Some of them can get past the secondary with their feet. We saw that with KJ Jefferson last year with Arkansas. We're going to see him again in the UCF game. Uh, we're going to face some guys that are going to stretch this defense. So we have to be able to be disciplined in our tackling game in order to be successful.
Yeah, I mean the fact that we basically made Jaden Daniels' his NFL draft tape alone. And then you think about the Ray Davis game, and then you think about the 4th and 17, and then you think about, I mean, Georgia's clearly a better team than you, but some of those plays, like the Lad McConkey play where he basically like makes an S up and down the field and he goes 60 yards. And only, by the way, I'll make this a positive. Shout out TJ Searcy for tracking him down on that play. I tweeted that out a few weeks ago, but the fact that he breaks a tackle like that, and also some of those guys are gone. We'll talk about that in a later show too, but those are the kinds of things that just that drive coaches crazy, that drive fans crazy, and that can single-handedly turn a win into a loss if they come in a close game. So, I mean, those are among the most frustrating types of things that you can possibly imagine because you think you're at the University of Florida, you've got a guy who can make the tackle or at least lure him out of bounds, if not like execute the tackle. But just turning these guys, ordinary slant route catches or scramble drills for 5, 6 yards into NFL draft types highlights. That's the kind of stuff that's just got to go.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I agree. So, all right, Neil. Well, that about caps it off for another amazing episode. We're 4 days into fall camp at the time of this recording. By the time you're listening to it, we probably have some more stories or feedback out there, what we're seeing on the field, and we will continue to report on it. So, in order to do that, make sure that you are subscribed down below, like the show, leave a comment. You want to have a chance to win this lovely hat from University Traditions. And make sure you're following us on all of our social media. You'll see that at the bottom as well. Our Instagram, Twitter handles, both the and all kinds of weather main handle and our recruiting handle, as well as our YouTube channels. So excited for this fall camp that's finally underway. And we're only now weeks away from kicking it off against the Miami Hurricanes.
That hat is fire, by the way.
It really is.
We showed up the camera one more time. Yeah. Also, I love how we just all went white. Like we didn't even plan this. We just all happened to.
So this is actually our way of saying that we want the Stormtrooper look for a game this year, all white, Billy Napier, make it happen.
Oh,
Some fans might not like that because they know the record and they're all whites, but I
not
don't
that I
think.
don't like the look of it, but that's
Yeah,
beside the point.
fair enough. Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in tonight. This was the All Kinds Weather Forecast signing off from another great episode.